Welcome to Awakening Soul Divinity, your sacred space for deep healing and transformation. Listen to inspiring conversations with healing experts, spiritual guides, and teachers as we explore ancient wisdom, modern healing, and powerful stories of change. I'll also share practical insights from my personal journey, from spiritual crisis to inner purpose. Whether you're seeking to overcome anxiety, embrace your true nature, or awaken your higher self, this podcast offers guidance to help you transform your life and elevate collective consciousness.
Hey everyone, I'm Caroline Rena, and welcome to the Awakening Soul Divinity podcast. And today's guest is Ricardo Villalba. Did I get that?
That's it.
That's it. Okay. Welcome, Ricardo. And I'm really excited that you decided to join me on this journey. And just thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So we'll start our conversation off with the space for, I like for people to see how others have gone through challenging situations in life and healed, and then decided to guide others through their challenges. So could you briefly share the catalyst or challenging experience that led you to your current path?
Being born. Oh.
I understand that one.
So I would say, there was many catalysts in my life, but I think the most recent one and the most pivotal was when I was in the U.S. Coast Guard. I was in the military for about 8 years, and it was very fast paced.
Mm-hmm.
My last year, my body started breaking down. And I got an injury and I wasn't recovering, and I went to the military doctors and they were giving me injections and they were giving me pills and it was kind of like a sit and wait thing over and over again, but I wasn't getting any better. I couldn't sleep. My body was breaking down. My hair was falling out. I had to go see a psychiatrist. I was having anxiety and depression, and I was having insomnia and I couldn't sleep. And I was taking a lot of sleeping pills, just to sleep, right? And a lot of pain pills. But it made life unbearable.
Mm-hmm.
And I started to question my future as far as, will I be able to actually recover and go into my career? Because I'd never been stopped that hard before physically, right? And then the mental strain started to come on, and then the emotional strain started to come on. And so what I did was I started to actually work with the chaplain, military chaplain. So I started searching for answers at that point, and I really was confused and I was lost, and it felt like a dark night. And I'm the conversation I had going on in my head was, am I going to make it? Am I going to be okay?
Mm-hmm.
I never had that type of anxiety before in my life, and it just came out of nowhere. So I started searching, and I ended up finding a doctor in Miami. I was stationed at Key West at the time, so I drove up maybe 3 or 4 hours. And by the way, if you hear noise, that's my bird.
I don't hear anything. It's okay.
Okay. Yeah, he's playing with his toys.
Yeah.
So I made it to Miami, and so I drive up like 3 or 4 hours to get there. And he introduced me to, emotional release or somatic work.
Mm-hmm.
And my first session was incredible. I was going there for pain, but I didn't know. I had no idea how much pain was involved with mental stress, emotional stress.
Mm-hmm.
And so he started to tie that in for me. So on my way back, I would go to see him. I would go to see him for the next following months as much as I could. And I felt like I was on a new beginning, like a new path. Like I was learning how to be myself in a different way. I started seeing the world in a different way. And
Mm-hmm.
I didn't think that I belonged in the military anymore. I was like, there's something out there.
Mm-hmm.
We were doing drug and migrant interdiction in the Keys in the Caribbean. And so when we were doing the migrant operations, I just felt something was off to see people trying to escape their land, and just throw a bag and take their wife and child, and get on a boat and maybe not to even make it across the other side.
Mm-hmm.
And then pulling these people out of the water and pulling them out of their boats, and like these are good people, and they had such a state of fear. So then I started to question things, right? So part of the catalyst was me not feeling not feeling that I was doing the right thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then the physical pain and the emotional pain. And so my contract was up the following year, and I decided to leave. I didn't know what I was going to do. I didn't know. I had no direction, but I was trusting myself that I would find a direction.
Mm-hmm. And we'll lead into the direction in just a moment. I just wanted to bring up a couple of things because you and I have a few things in common. One is the military. I was in the Army for 8 years, so I get that. I do recognize I was in the medical field, so I do recognize at least how long ago were you in?
I left in 2014.
Okay, so that wasn't quite as long ago as like I left the Army in 20 years ago. So things were a little bit different. They've started moving forward on some understanding of the mental and body stuff since a little bit because that you can see it at the VA. But what I found interesting in what you were saying, it's like the awareness in the military of the mind that has over the body wasn't available, and it was all about you know surgery, medication, all that kind of thing. And it's hard to deal with that when you're in pain because the pain causes anxiety and the anxiety causes the pain. So it's like a dual thing happening here. Would you agree with that from your experience?
Yeah, it's very paradoxical. It's you can't solve one without solving for the other.
Right. And so, yeah, so it's like a very interesting, and this goes on, it's not just the military, it goes on all over, especially within, in this country, we're both in the US. There's a way that the medical field looks at the body where it doesn't include the mind and the body together. So being able to walk through that and learn how to understand what that's about and how it all works together. And you obviously did that. And it led into my next question, which is how has your personal healing journey informed the work you do now in the world? And share a little bit about what you do.
So, and this is what when I work with people, I tell them this all the time that no one is separate from their own healing path. So as I'm working with people, it's not about I'm doing something or this is a process. This is a technique. It's really it's a state of being when you're working with people, right? So I think any healthcare professional is you have to have a certain degree of bedside manner, right?
Yes,
so,
thank you.
Yeah, anything you do, and so for me, my path was it was extremely humbling because not only did I recover from spinal injuries, anxiety, not being able to eat, not being able to sleep, and fatigue syndrome and all these things. But I also realized that my personal journey included my family. It included my friends. It included my past. So the healing went a lot deeper and to where I started. I think I've spent equal amounts of time working on myself and people in the last 10 years.
Yeah, I
and,
get
and
that.
it never stops.
Yeah.
It never stops. So I will say that now I'm taking a break from my own internal work because there does come a time where you have to be able to share and give back, right? But as far as the cases that I see, the people that I work with, it's about absolute empathy and presence and attunement.
Yeah. Yep. Well, in that, because you mentioned the piece about, working on yourself while at the same time guiding or helping others heal. And I'm going to make a mention of this because I know you know this, is we are our own healers. Having someone like you, and what do you do?
I bring a ray of sunshine to the planet.
Yeah, with your hands, right?
with just my presence.
Okay.
But I actually, so I'm a licensed acupuncturist.
That's it.
And,
Okay.
And a diplomat of Oriental Medicine, and I specialize in trauma release work.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's the process when someone comes to you, it's not, you aren't healing them, you are creating a healing space for their body and mind to heal. Am I correct in that?
Every healthcare practitioner is creating the environment for the person, whether it be a nutritional environment, whether it be an emotional environment or mental environment.
Right.
But it's with, what I find is that the body is, like you said, it has its own innate intelligence. And so all you're doing is that you're promoting that, and then you're teaching people to remember their own innate intelligence. Yeah. And so that process comes from trusting that you can help someone, is really trusting yourself. And it's not, again, that's why I say it's never this process of it's never a process of I'm the healer. I'm my own healer. Yes. And I'm sharing what I know with you. Yeah. But also it's like, the pearls of wisdom come from helping people. I think that's where when you do this for a long time, you see, for example, someone might have a realization that you've never lived that life experience before, right? For me, it's like what it is to be a mother, right? Or a sister. I remember I was working with one person, and there was a lot of, and he actually, if I remember right, he came from Ohio. He came to visit, and we were working together. And he was studying for his PhD in psychology. And so I was introducing him to a couple new theories, and he was very, very humble, very strong. And we went a lot, and we went into his family history. But one things that really, where he found an opening and realization he had, was that his parents splitting hurt him, not because his parents splitting, but because his brother went with the opposite parent. Right. So that was detrimental. That's something that he didn't know was even there. Yeah. So as far as, you can't fake that. You can't set up something to happen every time. Right. So that's the skill. That's the art, is setting up an environment where someone can actually tune into their body, feel safe enough, and that intelligence to feel safe enough to actually give you the response that you're looking for, instead of looping around and repeating the same pattern.
Yeah, and just a real quickie thing here, and I still want to ask you this question. The body, like our body innately knows how to heal, which you said that in so many words. And the thing is haven't you ever gotten a cut? I'm talking to my listeners or viewers right now. You get a cut on your finger, and you really don't need to do anything except maybe cover it and put some, Neosporin or something on it, but your body's healing that. The Neosporin or whatever you put on it is not doing that work. Your body is so intelligent, and your mind is so intelligent. It can heal everything. And I mean, it has so many chemicals that help us to balance ourselves out mentally, emotionally, and physically and spiritually, that it heals that. And I think that all fits in with what you're talking about. But now let me loop back around to what I want to know from you is, how do you balance holding space for other people while you're continuing on your own healing? Because I know you said you kind of step back, which makes sense because I've done that too, unless something shows up in my life and then I go in. But how do you balance all of that together?
So I think it becomes a way of life. So it becomes a way of life. So for me, say, for example, dealing with anxiety and actually being stuck in that for an extended period of time, the antidote to that is not more victimhood, not more helplessness. The antidote to that is to find a purpose and, not be your best, but better.
Mm-hmm.
I think I was thinking about that today, and there's a saying, it's like, live your best life, and it's true, but I think that also sets you up for failure because it's an extreme thing.
Yeah.
But better, meaning that something that's actually attainable, right? Because anxiety is this projection of something might happen in the future, or I'm not going to be okay. But if I'm giving effort to take an action to improve where my current state is, then that process actually creates the next state, and it's sustainable. Meaning that, I focus on, my career, or I'll focus on studying, or I'll focus on exercise, or I'll always focus on something that I have an interest in, and also that I have a responsibility to.
Nice.
So if it's with my friends, or within my communication, I recently started working at an acupuncture school. It's actually one of the top schools in the United States for Chinese medicine. And
Local?
it's local. It's in Fort Lauderdale. Yeah, it's in
Wow.
Fort Lauderdale.
Okay.
And yeah, so that just the opportunity to expand. It wasn't something that I thought I wanted to do. I literally hurt my neck. I went in there, and the clinic director was like, "Hey, do you want to work here?" And I was like, "Yeah, but only 1 day a week," because it's a lot, But anyway, it's challenging me to start to learn how to teach, right? So I don't have time. I don't have time to I don't have time to get stuck. It's like, take on more responsibility, but don't overdo it.
Right. Right. And know when to step back.
Right.
And that knowledge is very important. And also too, like getting better every day, that's part of it. But it's the 1%. You don't, like you were saying, you don't have to do 100% every day, because we're never going to be at 100% every day. So even that little, like, oh my gosh, today's not the best day, but I got out of bed and, I wrote in my journal, or I stretched. I can stretch now. I got issues with my shoulder. But just little things help every day, and being okay with that, celebrating even the little stuff is okay. Where we've been trained to, everything's got to be, perfect, and it's not always going to be that way. So it kind of puts this pressure on us, I feel, that creates it can create an environment of anxiety. Oh my God, I've got to do, better than everybody else because they're doing so great. And then you got all these people.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying is we like, right. Yeah. Especially now, like social media, we live in a world where like people are displaying their very best, and that's not real life. I mean, and there's, you got to take into consideration, there's billions of people on the planet, and so in the sense of how do you stay grounded? How do you set yourself up for success? It's easy to fall into a comparison. It's easy to fall into a lot of these. There's a lot of traps out there, and I think that you have to be committed to yourself. And I would say that, for one, I think especially in the last 5 years, I've found more where I just want to focus on I want to focus on a lot of the health services. I want to focus on teaching people more about somatic work, emotional release work, and really that I've made a commitment to it. So what happens is all other distractions kind of fall to the wayside. Those things that are energy leaks that you try to keep up with, maybe you're not too serious about. I can understand hobbies, but I mean, I think if you scatter yourself too much, then, which I've done, and that's why I'm sharing that with you. Like I've tried
Yeah, I know.
I've tried to master a lot of things, and I can only master a handful, if that, and so that's helped me.
Yeah. Yeah. You mentioned the word somatic. So I'm going to start asking you a couple of questions on that, because I really want people to understand what that means. Because for me, I had an experience at the end of 2021 where I had been doing all this cognitive therapy work on myself. And I remember I got I knew what was going on. I could visibly observe, well, not visibly, but observe from how do you explain that, outside of myself, whatever, my higher self can watch me do the crazy stuff that I do. But I got this email and it was telling me something that just threw me for a loop. And I'm walking around, I'm pacing, I'm shaking. I'm like, oh my God, my whole world's blowing up. My stress response is kicking in. All these different things are happening. And I'm watching myself do this. And I'm like, why are you doing that? You're safe. So big time stress response. Thank goodness I had someone in the room who was able to kind of hold my space and keep that feeling of safety. Cause I experienced PTSD and my traumas and all that kind of stuff. That's why I knew what was going on. But what I started to recognize is, why is my body reacting to something where I know that I'm safe, right? And so it just brought this question up. I started thinking about it a lot. And then the following year, because I think this was at the end of 2021, the following year was when I went on the road to do my old podcast called The Ride of My Life. So basically what that was me digging in to see about me and see what made me tick and what was going on. And the word somatic came up for me. And I'm like, okay, so this is interesting. And I did I'm looking all this stuff up about somatic and, how to re-regulate. And I used to dissociate. And or disassociate. I'm not sure what the word is anymore, but I went through all this stuff. And when I latched on to this word somatic. So my first question to you about this is, how did you end up practicing somatic therapy?
How I ended up practicing somatic therapy was the story I was telling you about when I went to go see, he's one of my teachers, Dr. Paul Canales in Miami. And he opened me up to that. That's one of the modalities that he helped me with. And so he taught it to me. I understood it. And then I just ran with it. The other thing too is because, when you're talking about somatic, and for people who don't know what somatic therapy is, brief introduction, soma means earth, right? And this is where the nutrients come from that we intake, and then our nutrients become our body, right? So
we're made up of the nutrients of the earth, though, correct?
That's correct.
Yeah.
So our physical makeup comes from the earth, and each one of those nutrients, each one of those elements has properties, right? Has a thermogenic effect. Like we can feel heat, we can feel cold, we can produce heat, we can produce cold, we can produce vibration, we can produce trembling. We can do everything that the earth can do, right? And also the animals. See, when animals they'll if they're under attack or they just experience something stressful, they'll kind of shake it off.
Yeah, right? That's what I was doing with
right. And that's a simple way to explain, a reset, if you will. But the somatic work is really it's body-based therapy, where you're also incorporating coaching, where you're not trying to fix anything. You're not trying to fix a label. Somebody comes with anxiety or depression, because the problem is that you've been labeled, and as we know, it's like the somatic work is really exploding now to treat things like trauma, right? So the things that people experience, there's an area where there's like learned helplessness, and so what happens is that you come up with a survival strategy. And like you said, for you, it might be disassociation. It might be, going on social media, eating, could be alcohol. I mean, there's different ways we can associate, watching TV. And so when we disassociate is we're not paying attention to our body, right? And a lot of things start to shut down. Your breathing might be more shallow. The organ function might diminish a little bit. You might lose energy.
Well, let me clarify something about not paying attention to your body. I want you to do this. When we are traumatized, we don't even want to be in our body. So being embodied is scary. To be in, when you're in your body, you can feel the pain more readily than you can when you're dissociate it out somewhere else, not having to even pay attention to it. Can you touch on that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, so the thing is that our the feelings, right? So what is pain, right? What is feeling? It's information.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we say, well, I don't want to feel this, right? If I'm having anxiety, I want to shut down. If I don't want to feel it, then I'm actually blocking part of my intelligence.
And isn't the brain doing that though? It's not necessarily.
It's the brain, yeah. The brain's
Yeah,
trying to protect you. It's
yeah,
trying to protect you from feeling. But
yeah.
again, this is again, that's part of the learned helplessness.
Mm-hmm.
Initially when anything happens to you, it could be very shocking. And then again, anytime we're in shock or there's an overload of stress, the brain is going to try to protect you, and it's going to shift the way that it moves your attention to something
Mm-hmm.
else. You'll start overthinking a lot, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then there might be other physical effects, but overthinking is one of them. And then we start to follow that thought pattern, and that thought pattern becomes our identity. And meanwhile, we don't realize, something really detrimental could be going in the body.
Yeah, and it's a vicious cycle too, because it goes here and then down to the pain, and
Yeah.
then back up to the brain, and then down to the pain, and it's almost like it becomes a cycle of protection, and your body starts picking up on the protection too, not just the brain. Like I recognize that everything I did, I think because I've got the shoulder thing going on, everything that I did was protecting myself, and now this has started, and well, started. I'm working on it now, but it's just very interesting how that equates, how that works together.
Like as far as your shoulder, it's when there's physical pain, the brain will start to actually shut off motor nerves going to the shoulder,
Yeah,
right? So making
yeah,
it less mobile. A lot of people get like frozen shoulder,
yeah.
but it's
Mhm.
more, but really, it's not a frozen or stiff shoulder. It can turn into that, but again, teaching the brain that it is safe, right? So this is where somatic therapy comes in, because they say, for example, it's like if there's physical ailments or some kind of chronic injury that keeps coming
Mhm.
back, what you're doing is you're setting up an environment where the body knows it's safe.
Yeah,
And so when
yeah,
the body knows it's safe, it's going to free up a lot of energy. And that energy can be felt.
yeah.
It-
And that's interesting that you say that, because I am actually in physical therapy right now for my shoulder. And this woman she does dry needling, by the way. And you want to explain a little bit about what well, I mean, it's mainly for the muscles rather than the meridians. Is that correct?
so yeah, so dry needling is an offshoot of acupuncture, and
Hmm.
I haven't studied it too much. I mean, I studied at classic traditional Chinese medicine where, I think we do, I don't know, a couple thousand hours. Dry needling is a little bit different. I think it's maybe like 50 hours of training, but it is very effective.
Hmm.
And especially it's effective in the sense where they do target trigger points, which are
Hmm.
basically, it's like you might have like fascial bundles knotted up, right? Or you might have,
Yeah.
yeah. And so it's a great way to release muscles.
Yeah, yeah. But this person who works on me is so well studied about how the pain mechanism works and all that stuff. But one of the things she said to me when she told me about the whole brain being involved in this, like, there's no injury. The injury's done. It's been healed. Now the pain's taking over, the brain's taking over on the pain part. So I asked her, I said, what are we doing next? Now that we know this is okay and we've done the dry needling, or you're going to work out now because we're going to retrain your brain. Because when you work out, very limited at the beginning, right? It's basically reminding your brain that it's okay, my brain, it's okay, it's safe to start not doing this, but doing movements that are going to remind it that it's safe, that I don't have to protect myself anymore. And that kind of fits in with what you're talking about, which is why I want to bring it up, because I think it's all very interesting how this works. Now, this is important, this piece here, because medication silences the pain, which keeps you from knowing that it's there, and I believe you can re-injure. So what are the drawbacks of medicating anxiety and depression or pain or whatever
Yeah, well,
in
the first,
this?
I mean, well, right now they're doing research and there's studies that show that you know, antidepressants and some anti-anxiety medication can actually cause cognitive decline.
Yeah, I've
Right?
heard that.
And so, you know, the longer the intake, or the more frequent it is, the bigger the, you know, the cognitive decline. So
Mhm.
that's really that's a huge drawback, because the thing is again, that when we're talking about anxiety or depression or pain, they're all the same. And so again, it's information trying to get to you. So once you allow the information to get to you, once you actually can learn from it, then
Mhm.
you start to not only adapt, but you start to evolve,
Yes. Yeah.
right?
That makes
And
a lot
even
of
like
sense.
in Eastern medicine, right? It's like, you know, you'll hear a lot of people say, well, you know, it's like, what is the root cause? What is the root cause? So my question would be this, you know, let's say, for example, somebody is taking a, you know, they're taking blood pressure medication, where in a lot of cases it is life-saving, you know,
Mhm.
but I think they're meant to be used short term,
Yeah.
right? But so if you look at the process over the long term, it's like there's, you know, they might be, you know, vasodilators, or they're blocking a, you know, a calcium channel where they're stopping the constriction of the blood vessel that's putting the pressure on the heart. However, my question would be, what's causing the constriction, right? If you work on the diet, if you clear the cholesterol, right, and they're still exhibiting signs of constriction where their blood pressure raises, right? So a lot of times that does go back to anxiety and depression. You
Mhm.
know,
Mhm.
even say, for example, we understand anxiety is like there's an exuberant use of the viscera, like the heart, right? So you'll get tachycardia. You know, there's you know, a huge pull for oxygen, right? So you'll
Mhm.
get
Mhm.
lung issues, right? And
Mhm.
then you'll start to produce a lot of cortisol and adrenaline, which are
But that's the stress
vasoconstrictors.
response, right?
That is the stress response. But what I'm saying is that the stress response is normal. It's a normal reaction
Yeah.
to stress. And so when we don't learn, for example, like if we're not learning, if I'm triggered by something, meaning that,
Mhm.
you know, if I'm having a pattern reoccur, if I'm not learning why I'm being triggered, then there's a reason why I'm being triggered. It's not just happenstance that this just happens to happen to me. It's my life lesson, right? And
Well, go ahead.
I'm not saying that's in every case, but
Right.
we tend to kind of make things into coincidence, right? Or to
Mhm.
story. But we talk about it so much, we're missing the exact pain is trying to show us something.
Yeah. Yeah. And what's interesting about all that is we're not taught to ask the pain or ask the body, because we're so separate. We're separated from the body that we don't look into it. We just allow the band-aid to cover over everything, and it just keeps covering and covering and covering and covering. And in my world, that created all this, the learned helplessness and the anxiety and the depression and, all that kind of stuff. The more we cover that up, the more of those not so feel good feelings are going to happen, and pain physically and mentally, emotionally as well.
Oh yeah. I'm not going to stop you. You're right on.
These are my experiences, and I like to make the conversation where it's like, you know, so people who are joining us in this can understand from both our perspectives, not just mine, that this is how things really work. You know what I mean? Not what we've been taught necessarily on how they work.
It's a
Right?
perspective. I mean, yeah, it's a perspective, you know, but it's understanding the base theory, right? Like understanding the survival response,
Yeah.
understanding the autonomic nervous system, how it works. And you can see that you can actually avoid taking medication, or you can actually improve your health. And I mean, we're talking about somatic therapy. Anything could be considered, almost anything could be considered somatic therapy, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it
Mm-hmm.
can go to breathing, as long as you're using your body and you're doing it with an intent,
Yeah.
then and it's guided, right? You're not just blindly moving. But I mean, just even exercise, right? You see, like athletes, they have a lower, blood pressure count, right?
Mhm. Yeah. Well, even somatic and somatic therapy, like sometimes when I get anxious, which still happens here and there, just doing the tapping on both sides of the body, which helps with the brain. Or I was doing EMDR, which the two sides of the brain. There's a whole lot of, you'd have to go into a whole lot of research to understand. And I'm not going to explain it. I don't know how it works. I just know this works when I get anxious.
Yeah, but that's the yeah. So I mean, that's the whole thing is you can teach because everybody has a body. You can teach it to anybody,
Yeah.
right? And you don't
Yeah.
have to. You don't have to. It doesn't have to be complicated. It's
Right.
actually like if I'm listening to you talk, I would say that there's nothing that I can teach you, right?
Yeah.
Because you've been exposed to this, so it's
Yeah.
easier for you to talk about it.
Yeah.
And the easier it is for you to talk about it, the easier it is for more people to do it. Because if we stay in this conversation and we do start showing people simple things, right?
Hmm.
Then it becomes a home tool. Like what did you use for pain in the 90s?
Tylenol,
Right,
aspirin.
because it
Yeah.
was right in your living room,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
So that's the whole thing. So shut the TV off and start, get on the ground and move your body, get into a
Yeah.
squat position, like you said, like tap your shoulders. But those things there's a science to it, right? Like when you're talking about EMDR, you're talking about bilateral stimulation, which is what
Hmm.
you did when you're doing the butterfly tap, tapping your
Hmm.
shoulders, right? It's like you're distracting the brain from the signals that it's producing, right? So when you draw attention into the body, you have to pay attention to what is being felt, and that's pretty much the science of it.
Yeah.
And that's really called, it's called interoception, right? So interoception is your ability to track with your awareness sensations in the body, and
Hmm.
that is the foundation. And then there's variance on it, how you do it, right?
Yeah. It's just all this is so interesting. I mean, I wish everybody knew knew all of this and they'd be able to heal themselves, but I mean, we're still kind of in that space where we
Anybody
trust.
can.
Well, right. Yeah, they can. They have the potential, but we're still trusting people outside of us when we don't trust ourselves. And I think that's a big thing. It's a big deal. Took me a long
Well,
time.
that is the commitment to be in a position of leadership for someone,
Yeah.
right? And you don't do that unless you lead yourself. So at some point, you have to trust something or something. It doesn't. You have to trust something. You have to take chances. Otherwise, we're
Right.
stuck.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so I want to ask this question just out of curiosity, based on what you just said. What's the one thing that you learned on your journey that you wish you would have known earlier?
That I'm perfect at the way I am. Meaning that, and not in the sense of you know, does a perfect thing exist? I don't know. But that I was very, you know, I feel that um, my own life experiences where I would really detach from myself and go into comparison, or go like maybe think I don't know enough, or maybe think I'm not good enough, right?
Yeah.
Like low self-esteem things, right? And even though on the outside it may appear that I was extremely competent, which I know I am, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
And this is what I'm saying is that it's easy from birth to be distracted and then get sucked into something.
Hmm.
So really, the one thing and I did a video on this too, but basically knowing that I don't have to do much. I'm already doing enough.
It's not even about doing, though. It's who you are is enough. Who I am is enough. And a lot of us get caught up in that not good enough piece. And it's like, but you're already good enough. But you don't have
Yeah.
to prove it to anybody or yourself. But it takes a lifetime to figure for some people to figure that out. How do you see, okay, with everything going on in the world now, how do you see the changes in what's happening with all these things going on in the world related to how we can heal our nervous systems, our soma, and why do we need to do this?
Because it's not going to get any easier. We're born into a big machine. We're born into a big machine that's already has its own agenda.
Mm-hmm.
And so that agenda doesn't include your well-being.
Yep.
So
Truth.
so you know, you can fight it as much as you want, you know, but it's a waste of time. And I think that what the thing is to become absolutely influential over yourself and have discipline and self-control to do the best you can for yourself and become influential for those around you, at least in your family or your community.
Mm-hmm.
And that requires, you know, not everybody wants to do that. You know, I think that especially in like the United States, we have a lot of freedom, so there's a lot of distraction, you know.
That's an understatement.
but that freedom's not free.
Right.
And so in the sense of, you know, I think everybody at their DNA level has this inert feeling of wanting to grow, wanting to expand.
Mm-hmm.
And in order to do that, we have to interact with other human beings. And I think when you're building something, you have to have excellent communication and excellent leadership skills,
Mm-hmm.
and also a shared language.
Yeah.
And so when you're talking about healing, there's so many different forms of healing that you can get lost in it. You can get very lost in it. And I think one of the safest ways to do that is to stay physically fit.
Mm.
Right. And then
That's key though, because you know, when you get like sedentary, nothing wants to work at all. I remember, you know, I mean, I was like that for, I don't even know how long. I was going through a deep, dark night of the soul also. And I think it was about 3 years worth of it. And it was all just contracting me within myself. And then the first thing that happened was I made the decision to go work with Fort Freedom, which is the group that helped me when I was going through depression a couple of years ago that I've mentioned before. But the first thing that they got us doing was working out and doing yoga. And that was immense, you know, but working out is so important. You're right. I agree with that. Or movement.
That's one thing.
Yeah.
That's one thing. And I think the other thing is good nutrition, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you start to take a look at that, I think what started me looking at like what's going on the planet was like, well, how do I start healing? Why am I slowing down? I had a friend, he's a longevity expert, and he walked me through detoxifying my body. And then that's when I started to realize, I'm like, wow, there's like a lot of chemicals in the food that we're eating.
Mm-hmm.
That which, by the way, what happens is the body starts to store it in, you know, it starts to store it in the flesh, you know. So a lot of people they'll have skin lesions, right, or acne, or it'll store it in the joints far away from the organs.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So people think they'll have, you know, arthritis when they don't. They just have like their joints are clogged up with pathogens, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
But in the sense is like when I started looking at that, it's like, well, yeah, Mother Earth is perfect. She gives us clean food. That's for a reason. It's just
Mm-hmm.
it's not just to eat something tasty. It's to sustain us, right?
Yeah.
So you want to look at that, right? Like, how can I get clean nutrients into my body?
Yeah, I think that in my healing journey, all of what you're talking about has been included. And throughout the process, what I've noticed is with the clean eating, with the exercise, with the, you know, therapy, whatever, somatic work, any of that stuff, working on mind, body, spirit, soul levels, you know, even now when something happens or comes up or I see something or whatever, I stay centered. You know, I don't like I told you about the email I got. I mean, that was, you know, whatever. And now when I experience something in my life, it's like, okay, this is interesting. It's a totally different mindset. It's a totally different experience, but it's so powerful when that happens. I celebrate that every day when that happens, because I'm not freaking out. I'm not losing it. I'm not feeling helpless. I'm not going through all of that stuff like I used to. So it's very powerful what you're talking about. Absolutely. I have some questions that I ask my guests, all of my guests. And
Sure.
the first question I'd like to ask you is, what does awakening mean to you at this time on the planet?
I think awakening is endless. And depending on where you are, you're gonna experience something different. And so there, I can't give you what a definition is, but that's an endless process. That's like similar to, someone say like enlightenment. But I think awakening is a new perspective, right? Where you cannot go back to the way things were.
Right.
And no way. And that's difficult, right? And I think that's happening for a lot of people.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, but that was that's your definition. I'm just trying to get yours. So that was perfect. What is divine, source, or God to you?
Divine source or God. So funny. So to me, I read the Bible, right? And I didn't start reading the Bible till about 2013, which is when I was in my last year in the service. And I'll share this story with you because it's not about the Bible, it's about ourselves, but so I was driving up to go see Dr. Canali. I was on US 1 and I'm driving, and all of a sudden I had had like this warm feeling in my stomach. And just to give you some a backstory, I was baptized Roman Catholic, then I became an atheist, and I used to make fun of God. I used to make fun of religion.
Yeah.
And not knowing, but so anyway, I was driving, and I was about 2013. I was still 33 when this happened, and I felt the presence of grace, and I felt God talking to me, and I started crying, and I was crying for like an hour because I'd never felt this much love from any man, woman, or child, not my mother, nobody I've ever dated. And it was surreal because I'm like, it was so overpowering. And I don't think I cried probably in 10 years before that. So,
Wow.
I knew it was real, and it was a clairaudient experience, meaning I didn't hear sonic words, right? But I felt it, and it said, "I love you, I miss you, I wash away your sins, I forgive you," And I felt it, and I felt a familial feeling, and so what is God, right? But what for right now, especially when it comes to awakening and these things, I feel a very strong charge to, um, I felt a very strong charge to go start researching, go start looking, and I actually got pulled into my faith at that time. And it's funny, and every single time, then I would start going to this. There's a church right there on Duval Street. It's an Episcopal church, but it's a white building, red doors, and you go in, and I would go and light a candle, and I would pray. And every time I would pray, tears would be gushing out of my eyes, and I would see my family in a new way, and I'd see my friends in a new way, and I started praying for others. And this was all non-provoked. This is all like, this is what you're supposed to do, And I thought I was crazy, and I heard the message, and I called the chaplain. And he said, no, that happened to me. It happens to some people, right? They have an awakening. They have this strong feeling, right? And it usually happens when you're in a dark place. You see a lot of people that even go to prison, or, they're incarcerated, or some kind of place that they're in that's overwhelming. And all of it, it's a strong feeling. And so for me, God is something that is merciful. God is something that is graceful. Right. So I have a hard time with it. I have a hard time with, and I say this, I don't care who listens or who watches, but I have a hard time with, God's not a destroyer. That's not true. That's, that's, and so that for me is that, then, who in the Bible was not a destroyer? Who had the cleanest message in the Bible?
The red lettering of Jesus.
Jesus had the cleanest message,
Of
but
course.
even then, it wasn't about Jesus. He was still pointing to God.
Yeah.
Right. So, but that was the cleanest message. And the reason I say that is because there's a distortion when it comes to, like, if we're taught that God is a destroyer and he's a punisher and all this other stuff, God doesn't have genitalia, by the way. And I don't think God does, but anyway, just there's a lot of distortion around it, and everybody has their meaning.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I think God is it's the loving creator. That is merciful and graceful, and then we as human beings, because of the way we're built physically, we have limitations as to what we can see universally, right? Like when you see a rainbow, you're not seeing all those colors, you're interpreting white light.
Yeah.
So in a sense, it's like, we all have our different beliefs of like what God is and what language and what the rules are and all this other stuff. But I don't know. I think that when you come into contact with that energy, you follow that, it's miraculous, and I think that we're the ones that I think it's set up perfectly that we don't know, so we make a lot of mistakes, and that draws you closer to God.
The great mystery. The Native Americans call it the great mystery.
It is a great mystery.
Yeah. And you said something that was very interesting to me also. You said about the dark, we have to be in a dark place before we can start kind of pulling ourselves.
Not necessarily. It just happens. Some people find God in a dark place.
Well, and I've noticed that it happens with quite a few of us. But here's the thing. If we were always in a light place, we wouldn't need to look. We wouldn't need to search. We wouldn't need to seek. When we're in a dark place, I call it my 2x4 moment. It's like I'm in my darkest place and the 2x4 whacks me across the head because I haven't been listening to the still small voice of God or my higher power. And so that dark place creates that space for me to crack it open, and it seems like as humans, we have a tendency to try to get through these things on our own in our own way, and it doesn't always work that way without allowing. Mine is more accepting, surrendering, allowing, that kind of thing. So the dark space helps with that. At least it helped with me, so that's pretty cool stuff. Thank you. All right, so the next question I have, I'm kind of leaning into bringing some of this information in at this point because I'm noticing it's out a lot there, It's out there a lot now, and it's something that I've been getting what I call downloads on for a long time, and it's about the divine feminine. The creation of balancing our divine masculine and our divine feminine, and you and I have had a little bit of this conversation before, and we all have that inside of us. We all have a masculine version of ourselves and a feminine version, and it has nothing to do with gender. It's just how, like you said about God, and there's no genitals, it's just a balance of energy, right? So the question I want to ask you is, what forgotten or suppressed feminine wisdom do you believe is most needed today?
Nurturing. So feminine wisdom. So I don't know a lot of feminine wisdom. That's number one.
Oh, that's not true.
No, I don't. I mean, it's very subjective, but the ability, even our bodies, right? Our bodies come from the earth. The earth is a feminine being, right? So feeling. And I mean, we are here to feel everything, not just good, but we're here to feel everything.
Mm-hmm.
So then in that sense is like learning to feel with acceptance, because that's very powerful. It becomes learning to feel with acceptance. For example, like a mother and a child, my child fell, my child burped, my child wrote on the wall, right?
You do that.
There's an understanding there.
Yeah, yeah,
You know?
yeah. But I mean, like one piece of feminine wisdom that I see in you is compassion. So,
I don't know. I don't know if that's feminine. I think that's why I said I don't know how to categorize it.
okay.
Um, I know that that compassion is not something for me that compassion is not something for me that um, I don't think that I learned it from uh, a man or woman, even though I know, like, we're talking about energetics, a feminine and a masculine has nothing to
Mhm.
do with it. So, like I said, I don't know how to categorize the things that are feminine and masculine in the sense of this is absolute.
So here's the thing. This is a brand new question, and it's because things are going in this direction. And thank you for being brave for for even saying anything about it, because I'm curious to see what's going to come out of this question. The energies of the masculine, for example, are action oriented, and I mean, strength and power, that kind of put out there. It's external. The feminine wisdom is more internal. It's the moon. It's receptive. It's compassion. It's love. It's, I mean, not that, but that's the energy. It has nothing to do with. That's why I'm saying, men and women both have divine masculine and divine feminine energies. So when you're balanced and centered, you're gonna be that anyway. It's not like a definitive explanation. It's just think of the moon and think of how the moon is, and think of what the moon is like. The sun is the masculine. The sun is bright, it's shining, it puts itself out there. The moon is receptive, and you know what I mean? So having this conversation, I think, is important for people to recognize that we all have this inside of us. Does that help any?
So in Chinese medicine, we work a lot with the masculine and feminine, right?
Yeah, the
And
yin yang,
and
right?
correct, right?
Okay.
So blood or fluids is more feminine, right? The mind is more masculine.
Right.
But so I understand those aspects, like the light being more masculine, the dark being more feminine, the moon being more feminine, the sun being more masculine.
Mm-hmm.
But I want to draw your attention. There's a book called it's called um, King, Warrior, Magician, uh, Lover,
That's the name
right?
of the
And
book.
yeah,
Okay.
it's the four archetypes of man, right? Now there's different blueprints, right? And so one of the let's say for example, take the king, for example, right? There's the benevolent king, that's the
Mm-hmm.
balanced king, the giving, right? Caring for the people and channeling messages from the divine
Mm-hmm.
to serve the people, right? Um, so, and then you have the tyrant king, which is I must rule, I must
Mm-hmm.
have absolute power, I must crush, I must establish my authority.
Right.
But nowhere in there are there's not a distinguishment of feminine aspects, right? Because those aspects can also come from men. For example, there's the lover, right? There's the lover, which is there's the benevolent lover, and
Mm-hmm.
then there's the sadist lover, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like
Mm-hmm.
a lover that takes, and then there's a lover that gives.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's, as far as when we talk about so like even the word compassion, does that come from the feminine or the masculine? I don't know. Is it a divine thing? Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, do you know who wrote the book?
Oh, that's a good question.
I can look it up on Amazon. That's fine.
Yeah,
I'm gonna
yeah, you
probably
can.
add it as a link when I
Yeah,
put
I
it
know
in.
it may have been a student of Carl Jung.
Oh, that's shocking.
Yeah,
Okay.
that was sarcasm.
No, it's not. It doesn't surprise me at all.
That was it.
Yeah, I like Carl Jung. Okay. Can you share with us how people can get in touch with you?
Absolutely. They can email me at unifiedearthmedicine.com.
Okay.
I'm on Instagram at Unified Earth Medicine or at Ricardo Villalba.
Okay. And all this information is going to be down in the description anyway. So you'll be able to find it down there. And Ricardo, is there anything else you would like to add before we go? And also, if you could share one message with those who are just beginning their healing journey, what would it be? Maybe
Take
kind
it
of
easy.
combining it. Yeah.
Take it easy. Take it
Easy.
slow.
Take
Take it
it
easy on
easy.
yourself.
Nice.
Take it
Yeah.
slow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Life is going to throw you so many curveballs. Life is going to give you all the adventure that you want. Life is going to give you all the challenges you want. Take it on yourself to treat yourself gently.
Good. That's a great answer. Okay. All right. Thank you so much, Ricardo. This was a great conversation. I really appreciate you being here. And to everyone else, thank you for being here on Awakening Soul Divinity and look forward to seeing you next time. Bye.
Bye-bye.